The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Danilo McGarry, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Danilo, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy to have you here with me today, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. And I normally don't go on podcasts, so this is interesting for me because I have my own podcast, but I'm on the other side of the fence now, so it's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, and you have one of the fastest growing AI podcasts in the world, right? That's what you're advertising, at least, right? So It's really interesting to have you here as a guest for my show and actually get to dive into all the things that you've also experienced running your own show, but also in the conversations you're having with leaders and everywhere you go with this as well, right? So I'm really excited that you're here. So Danilo, based on that, what common misconceptions do you think rule the current AI market?
Unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions, which is a little bit disappointing because AI has been around for 69 years exactly. And still people misunderstand it because I think, it just exploded really into the scenes three years ago once ChatGPT came out. But the main misconceptions are around the fact that AI is magic. It just plugs and plays into everything and it can do everything. But that's definitely not the case. I've spent my whole life transforming companies, some of the world's most complicated companies like banks, healthcare institutions. And one thing that I learned as a practitioner is that, AI is not plug and play. You have to be purposeful about the way that you launch it and the way that you use it. You have to organize work. You have to organize processes in a very particular way in order to be able to use AI and use automation so that you can automate as much of the end-to-end, have the biggest impact in a company or in a team. So that's the biggest misconception, this fact that, people expected to read their minds and to do these magical things. But in fact, it's just like any other tool. You have to engineer how you're going to use it. And you have to use it for the correct things as well. So that's one misconception. There are many. I could probably do a whole hour on just misconceptions.
So is that the misconception basically, saying that this is easy, or is that the big problem? People think it's easy, or?
The misconception is that it's, there's two sides of the misconception. One is that people think it's absolutely, super intelligence and it will get there very, very quickly. And when you set expectations that high, but you do no work in order to get the returns from it, I get very surprised how people then say, oh, AI is hype. AI doesn't work. Of course, because you've done zero work in order to make it work. You've just deployed it and whatever and given it the minimal amount of instructions, but you still expect miracles out of it. So that's the problem. It's like a double-edged sword. There are very high expectations, but then very, very lazy people expect these magical returns, quickly get disillusioned by it and call it hype, which is absolute nonsense.
But that's also, I had someone on the show recently, I think it was Eric Siegel, currently non-published episode, where he called this a special form of criticism also. There's this hype criticism, I can't remember the name he called it actually, but where you you're afraid of this, but you're afraid on the same premises as those that hype it. So you're saying like the hypesters will go like, this is just going to go crazy and go into everything on its own, magic button kind of thing. And the other ones are saying, oh, I'm super afraid that it will do that because it will be everywhere in a second. And I'm afraid of that because it will ruin everything. So the market is very dominated by these two positions, right? Those are like, no, this will ruin everything in a heartbeat. And those are like, this will improve everything in a heartbeat. But what they share is this in a heartbeat thing, right?
Exactly. It's a culture that we're in of instant gratification, instant result, overnight success. There isn't a single thing on earth that works in that way. Everything works in the long form when you want to have real transformational change or impact. And AI is exactly the same. It just it gets there a little faster, a little easier, but because people overhype it, mostly people who don't understand how to use it, they set the wrong expectations in the market. So yeah, one of my life's missions is to teach everybody AI the correct way and to teach everybody how to use it the correct way. That's probably the biggest thing that I stand for, is real down-to-earth, pragmatic use of AI and how to get the most out of it. And that's why I think it's having so much success around the world, because I'm not going around hyping AI and saying these ridiculous claims. I'm just going around telling people exactly how to use it properly. And I think that's a breath of fresh air because there's no black magic to it.
No, exactly. I think I want to get into the practical things, right? But I also want to just say that it seems to me sometimes that people, my wife quoted a book she's reading right now that says that only 2% of the predictions from economists, top economists, actually end up coming true because no one can predict the future, and if they could, they'd probably not be at a job anymore, right? They'll be doing something else, right? But the point is, that we have a chaotic past, right? That's sort of unstructured, and a lot of things that are not set in stone and easy just to apply things to. The world exists, and the world is complex, and even enterprises are complex in the way they exist, right? And there's also this, and that coupled with the uncertain future. So the way things are right now is not how it will be in 5 years. I often think that, especially the last one, right? That how it is right now, which is already complex. People tend to feel they can sort of say, oh, what we do now will be this and that, but they don't even know what we're doing now. But then in 5 years, right, the things will change and we'll have new roles. So how do you see that? How do you see AI, I know you can't say, for sure, but some of the trajectories that, job functions and society is moving into that will maybe impact how the world will look in 5 years?
So you're asking me to be part of the 2% of the economists who are always wrong.
Yeah,
Yay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm actually, in all seriousness, I'm actually pretty good at my predictions.
Mm-hmm.
I predicted things, 8-10 years ago that have come true in the right year, actually, as well. Mm-hmm. So I did for once contemplate having the handle on social media as Mystic Dan. Because I could predict the future and people were like really gobsmacked sometimes. Okay, but let's go into...
We also should do another intro. Welcome to The Only Constant. I have Nostradamus with me today. And
No. He was a different level. That guy was incredible. No, so to answer the question, I think there's actually 3 phases that we will go through over the next 20 to 30 years. And I'm very comfortable actually to talk about these longer term phases. Obviously, the further out I go, the less accurate it will get because, I am not Nostradamus. But definitely within the next 8 to 10 years, as, governments are completely behind in regulating and controlling AI, and they don't want to either, actually. I'll tell you some stories around that. What's going to happen is the private sector will completely dominate AI. They will make as much profits out of it as possible. They'll create as many markets out of it, many products. And there's going to be companies that are going to aim to reduce their workforce by 50% or more. And there are going to be some and very rare companies who are going to go for, let's create this utopian environment of a company that does everything and everybody's happy. Those are going to be really rare.
Those are the one-person billion-dollar unicorn something, right?
Exactly, yeah. There's going to be some of them, but not many. And this is going to cause actually mass unemployment. So the unemployment rate from the different scenarios that I've looked at with my team is anything between 20 to 25% global unemployment rates. And to give you some perspective, COVID at its peak reached, I think, 18 to 20%, depending which reports you read. So over the next 8 to 10 years, it's going to be actually pretty horrific for people who are not changing, people who are not adapting. They will lose their jobs, and that's inevitable, especially for certain categories of jobs, which we can go through later as well. Mm-hmm. That's going to create huge problems for governments who are already with deficit problems. They're trying to pay, the deficit, and the interest payments on that is starting to look like it's going to falter. So if governments don't fail in the next 8 to 10 years with this extra bit of issue on top of it, with people not paying taxes because they're not working, then they will actually fail on the second phase. So the second phase is going to be actually, I would say network governments are going to start to emerge. So not one country emerging, it's going to be a couple of countries emerging as a union bloc, a little bit like we've seen in union blocs in the past. So those are going to become more prominent because that's the only way countries are going to survive together. They're going to start, forming stronger partnerships, stronger than what we have today. And then we're going to be in an era by then, this is 8-10 years now, where people can just print whatever they want. Humanoids can make whatever we want, almost, not everything, but at least some basic products. So instead of you going out, to a shop and buying a shoe, you can just print it. You want a new shoe, you just make it. Your AI will make it for you, design it, and you print it. People don't know this, but there are already machines which are printing organs today. They're printing synthetic skin and all kinds of things which are extremely complicated. So printing a shoe...
You're saying the future will be my printer being out of magenta again and refusing to print anything.
Yeah, no. But it will be definitely a self-service economy. People will be able just to make and whatever they want. So what's the point of buying things anymore? So the economy that we're in, where you work, you pay taxes, you go and get your money left over, you buy things, that's going to change quite a bit in this second phase. That phase will last for about, I'd say another 10 years, where we are adapting to this new phase. Governments are adapting, new forms of control will come in. Then there's going to be two different types of governments which are going to go utilitarian, absolutely completely control their people, and others which will be a little bit more collaborative. And that's going to form the alliances I mentioned. Then the third phase, and this is like, so 8 plus 10, so we're 18 plus years out, is going to be the period of, I would say, Renaissance 2.0 or Enlightenment 2.0, where we're actually going to start working out that the economy has completely changed. The way we do and pay for stuff and buy things is completely changed. We're going to start working out very quickly that it actually doesn't make sense for us as human beings to spend 40+% of our time working to pay taxes, working to buy stuff. And we're going to come up with a new purpose. I think human purpose will change significantly at that point. Because by then, all machines and AI would have taken our work or can do everything we can do. So what's the point of us doing that anymore? And then my hope is that we will find a new purpose. Either it is going to explore new planets, finding infinite sources of energy, curing all diseases, that kind of stuff. It's going to become a team-led purpose towards a higher goal to extend humanity in some way, because at that point, inverting demographics would have caused a lot of population collapse in many countries. We would have seen the impact of depopulation actually at that point. So we want to conserve human history. We will find other ways of doing that, and that's going to be our new purpose. So I think other things will take over other than just jobs and trying to buy stuff and being materialistic. Humans will have a new purpose by then.
Well, I think that's an interesting 3-phase plan, right? And I've also heard, the coming to the world of surplus or something, coming from a world of scarcity and all that. That's a lot of people have written about that. Also, like Kai-Fu Lee 4 years ago and all that. And then you have a little dystopian period first, and then you have the utopian, right? So it's basically the age of monsters in between the S curves, right? To some extent.
Exactly.
So you have something like that. But what I sometimes feel, I'm an educated historian as well, is that people sort of overlook a little bit as well the efficiency gains we've had previously and how we've dealt with that. We've already had a lot of things like electricity. I'm never going to talk about the car or the horse car, because I think that was a more a like for like replacement to some extent that made us drive more, like snail mail to email. But the whole electricity thing actually also, it didn't mean that we were out of jobs. It just meant that we made more more crappy jobs also, basically, right? And we got more, and we invented more jobs that were superfluous, right? And I said this in a conversation to a friend the other day that you spoke about people will be redundant. I said, but we are already redundant. I don't hunt my own food. I don't transport my own food. I don't build anything I live in. I'm redundant. I do PowerPoints.
Yeah. Wow, that's a depressing way of looking at it.
No,
I think I agree with you to a certain extent, but this is a technology. This is a revolution that is different to the others.
Mm-hmm.
When we had the printing press and we could print more stuff, great. When we had the car coming for the horses, we can go longer distances, great. Carry more stuff, great. But we're talking about, we are recreating ourselves into an electronic, physical robotic form. Once AGI or ASI, by the way, we should talk about the distinction of those two. Mm. Once ASI or AGI combined with a physical robot, you basically have a superhuman. So this is the first time we've actually replaced ourselves, right? In all other forms of evolutions we've had, it's replacing things around us, things that we use and utilize.
Yeah, but that's what I challenge a little bit by saying electricity, right? And we can also say computers. They're not. They don't do a thing. There's nothing they do. The problem is if you gave someone a computer, put it in front of them, in the 80s, they will be like, what? But if you say, hey, here's a computer that does your accounting, whoa, people will be like, because then it becomes purpose, right? So this is general purpose technologies, right? We've had those waves. And I'm just critical. Is this going to be,
It's
because
different.
you also said, it takes time to implement it and build it in. So you said that in the beginning, but now you're saying in 8 to 10 years, the whole world will be turned on its head.
So 8 to 10 years is mass unemployment. It's the implementation of these technologies. It's not, nothing's really going to change. We're still going to be consuming. We're still going to have, have most of the jobs we have today. We're going to still have them. New jobs will be created, but nothing too crazy will change. We're just going to get more chaotic. But it is different. It is different, Lasse, because it's not, the computer, it automated the blue collar work, white collar, blue collar work. But as soon as we're getting a humanoid that has dexterity to the level of a human and much more strength and endurance than we have, we are then taking that software digital form into the physical world. And that's the difference. And I think the leap is actually way smaller than people think, because we have autonomous vehicles. They're doing extremely well. Driving is an extremely complicated task, way more complicated than just walking around your house. So that's the form of physical combined with intelligence. And once we have true intelligence, it's just going to get better. But then doing that in simpler forms where you're just walking around your house doing dishes, that's less complicated than driving. So we are going to see, once autonomous cars, take off, and they are starting to take off this year, actually. I think this year is a takeoff year. We will see many other forms of robotics and humanoids in other aspects of life. And that's going to be the trigger to a lot of changes.
It also means that everything will become as a service, right? And I think, the whole, you said the printing thing, the whole consumer thing, I think, we don't have any, there's less and less over time, there's been less and less waiting time to consume, right? 500 years ago, you had to wait until Christmas to consume the pig or something like that, right? But now you can basically consume anything you want to consume all the time, and that's going to get even faster, right? Even if you want to build something very complex, you'll have robots that can actually do that very quickly for you, and and just get it right. But there still leaves the whole consuming thing. We need consumers, right? If everyone's laid off, I always say there's no robots, right? If there's no one to buy the produce of the robots, why would we have robots? You say governments, but enterprises will have the same issue, right?
But that's why I think economy will have to change, and essentially we're going to be driven out of what we're supposed to be doing. What we think we're doing right now is supposed to be what we're doing. I think that will change.
But isn't this what we're already doing? We're doing consumption, right? Aggressive demand. We're just consuming today already. That's a capitalist mantra. So if we just say, because I'm just trying to take a London narrative to say that we go more aggressive on the consumption. We just more consumption, more capitalism.
No, that won't happen. So I'll explain it in a different way. I used to have a very modest lifestyle. I was born in Brazil. born in a very modest background in a third, fifth world country, let's say. If we're honest, it's fifth world. No one talks about fifth and third world anymore. It's more economically developed and less economically developed. But if we're brutal about it, it's really third, fourth, fifth world countries. And I came to a point in my life where I've experienced great wealth. I can almost buy and do anything I want. And I've met people who are in even greater, much greater, purchasing power than I have. And one thing I've realized is it gets exciting to consume things. And it's nice to try things and travel and experience things. But after a while, your priorities change. And I think the exact same thing is going to happen to the human story. We are in this point of consumerism because, not too long ago, we're in wars where we had to ration the things that we do, ration the things that we eat. So we are in this period where, for less than about 50 years, we are just consuming stuff because it's exciting, to buy stuff, race cars and fashionable clothes. And that's going to get boring at some point. And we're going to start realizing that it's a bit futile.
But isn't it already boring, Danilo? Isn't it already boring? Because,
it is.
But then you start buying more expensive clothes with another brand. It's just more expensive. It's just the same clothes. We already do that. We make things hollow, right?
No. But you do reach a point in wealth, personally, and in the world. You see, one thing that I forget sometimes, even though I came from a poor country, which is not poor anymore, but it was at my time. I went to some countries in Africa, for instance, to do speeches and to do work. And, it hit me. I was like, shit, I'm in these great cities all over the world all the time. But sometimes I go to cities or countries which are not that developed. And then I realize there's only 50% of people that have electricity in some of these countries. Sometimes only 20%. So we haven't yet reached a point in history where everybody has abundance.
No.
And that will take time. We're going to talk about, 10, 20, 30 years or more. But once we reach this point where we have tremendous abundance, everybody has it pretty much. No, everybody, not 100% of people will have it, but most will. We are going to start getting bored of that. And the other thing that's happening as well is the generation that we're in. So Generation Z is, yes, they've grown up in this consumerism environment, fantastic. But the next generations after them, I'm already starting to see they're valuing a lot more human connection. They're valuing experiences. So it's a combination of things that I think will create.
But that's also weird, right? Because that's a reaction also to the whole social media thing and the whole where we don't meet each other. Now we're valuing human connection, right? And I'm just wondering, is the same going to happen? How's my big uncertainty, right? And I also asked you about the future, and you had a plan for the future, which I'm like, okay, so it's not that uncertain. But for me, it's more, I'm wondering about what kind of vinyl we're going to be buying in 5 years, right? How is that? What is that going to look like? Are we going to? Is it only going to be my parents who fall for all the AI generated images on social media? My kids be like, "Whoa, this is crap." Yeah, I can see it. I know it. I don't. Or who's going to actually? What's going to be the value, the currency? I think that sometimes we look too much about on now and say, how will this change? But then people change as they grow into the new ones, right? Yeah. And then things change with it to some extent, right? And also you say that you get bored with wealth, but then, Danilo will die and then his kids will be like, oh, I like consuming for the next 20 years. And then they will die. And it's more like if you live forever, maybe we'll have a problem, right?
Okay. I mean, think about it when you look at the world's richest people. How do they dress? They dress terribly. You look at them, if you didn't know who they were, if they were just nobody, they would just think they're just,
Did I just show that I don't care about fashion? I think I did. You asked me, like, I don't know what they look like.
When you meet somebody who's a millionaire, great. A lot of them, they have the mindset of consuming things. They want to try and go on a jet. They might have some supercars. But once you start getting into the billions, tens of billions, you very quickly start seeing a different priority. It's a priority about creating legacy, about something that's really, something that really has depth and substance. So that's what I mean. I think the same thing will happen to human history. The same thing that happens in our personal life.
We'll all be billionaires. We'll all be billionaires. That's basically.
At some point, relatively to previous generations, yes. And then we're just going to and also it's not sustainable consumerism, right? At some point, it is going to come, bring destruction of our planet to the point where we're going to be like, oh shit, we have to stop. So it's many, many things that will point to, okay, consumerism has to go away. We have to find a deeper purpose to our life. And don't forget, anxiety, depression, suicide rates are all going up, even though we're getting more wealthy, right?
Yeah.
So it's because we are chasing a futile, a shallow existence. And at some point, we all reach this, enlightenment period in our lives. Sometimes it's a midlife crisis. Sometimes it's sooner. Sometimes it's later. But we all reach a point in our personal lives where we go, no, there's something greater to life. There's legacy, and there is helping people and doing other things. So I think the same thing will happen to humanity as well. It doesn't make sense that it will happen to all of us personally, but it doesn't happen to the world itself in our history. I think that will happen eventually.
We're sort of wired for scarcity as well, right? As human beings. So I think that's maybe the biggest uncertainty. How will we react when we have a world of abundance? Will we still be greedy? Will we still be hoarding for tomorrow when maybe there's no more berries in the bush, right? Like we used to do as our brains. That's what a lot of people are talking about. We're not wired for this. And this uncertainty, maybe also the depression you're talking about as well, right? Is that something that sets in when we don't have to hoard? When we're hoarding animals and we don't have to hoard, what am I doing it for then, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the biggest threat.
And that's why I think, purpose will shift towards other things that we haven't solved, like solving all diseases, finding abundant energy, exploring other planets. We will start to shift our attention to other things which have a little bit more depth and more legacy, and preserving humanity as well, because we're going to start seeing a lot of challenges to our population at some point soon.
I love this discussion, but let me just change it to a little bit different thing. I thought about the other day, actually, that every time we've automated and optimized things, right, we've sort of, as a society, we've also had less use for people who were unskilled, right, and uneducated, and so we've added to education levels and time and all that. So now my kids are going to be at school for almost 20 years or something like that, right? And we go back just to my dad's generation; he was in school for like 12 maybe, and so it just goes up and up and up. The more complex we make the world, and the more we can do with technology. And don't you think maybe? I just read about the whole, some of the big consultancy firms saying that, okay, they might not need graduates in the future, they might not need junior positions, all that. So don't you think the graduate roles today, junior consultant, maybe even consultant roles, or that kind of entry-level roles will also just be school in the future? So I'll just add 5 more years of school, then 10 more years of school. And then in the end, UBI, Universal Basic Income, will just be all of us going to an eternal school to learn what AI wants to teach us.
Well, part of the story, I think, is the opposite. So I work a lot with tech companies. One of them is Synthesis, which is a spin-off from Elon Musk's SpaceX school. And what I'm seeing is the opposite. So I'm seeing actually the education period condensing to half or less, because a lot of us are going to end up having our own AI assistants to teach us, a little bit like a fantastic tutor that's always around, a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also education is changing. It's becoming a lot more gamified, and it's becoming a lot more problem solved and teams based. And this is the future of education. A lot of public schools run by governments, they're going to take a much longer period to catch up to this, but they will, I hope, eventually. But a lot of private schools are already going in this direction.
But
this
what
Alpha and other.
What I'm getting at is the whole experience thing, right? That you need someone senior to have experience. That's what everyone wants, a senior guy now. No one wants a junior guy, because junior guys can just be done by, hey, I can do that work, right? So now how do we get the senior guy? That's my point, right? Is that another level of school, right? That's my point. That was what I'm getting at, right? There's also something for humans to get to that level. It's a maturity thing, right? And sometimes having a mortgage as well, right? I don't know.
So that was education, but now I'm going to answer the other question, which is about workplace and the typical triangle pyramid for most companies, right? With a lot of juniors at the bottom, less senior people at the top. So I think there will be a shift where we don't need as many junior people, because, to be honest, AI can do their jobs better than they can. But there will come a period where those juniors who are self-schooling, learning, becoming solopreneurs, who now have the skills that those executives don't have. They know how to apply technology. They know how to transform. They know how to be entrepreneurial, which a lot of employees don't know how to do. So there's going to be two things that happen. The young kids are going to come and beat the masters. So the students will become the master because they know how to use technology. A lot of people, 30, 40 plus have no clue. They're just learning. So there's going to be a shift of power at some point soon. And then a lot of the people who were not able to get jobs, they're going to be forced to become solopreneurs. And the solopreneur market is going to continue to explode. Actually, it is exploding. It's growing about 40% every year. More and more people are going into solopreneurship than actually going into employment. So the freelance market is continuously growing every year for the past 5 years. So that's only going to exponentially explode now with AI and the fact that they have this superpower next to them.
I agree with you, and I think I'm just going to challenge you a little bit because I'm also seeing that maybe I don't agree with you, or maybe you don't agree with yourself. Let's see if I can get you to go there, right? No, because what you said at the beginning was, people expect this to come in and do a lot of things, but it's not purposeful. You used the word purposeful, right? And how we get to the whole purposeful thing when we do things in business and enterprises and societies, and then you're saying that skills will sometime overtake the seniors, but the seniors, as far as I know, understand the purpose. They always understand the contextual purpose of what we're trying to do more, have the complexity of an enterprise and all that, the whole alignment scheme, what's actually driving big organizations and all that. They have experience navigating that because they tried being juniors and then up the ranks, right? But now you're saying the opposite. You're saying that skills coming in, just having raw skills to use tech, will upend those that have the purpose understanding. Is that what you meant?
No, so I'll explain further. So there's a lot of, obviously, people who have more experience have experience of dealing with situations, and they've been through more things than younger people. But in general, what I'm seeing is they're lacking the technology skills. They're lacking the transformation skills because this is a situation they haven't been in before.
Well, that's been true for decades, hasn't it?
It has been true for decades, but we haven't had a technology or tooling at this level before. You see, it's not just about AI. There's multiple things happening in the world of technology all at the same time. And I'm calling this the perfect storm. It's a term that I've been using for a couple of months now. So it's not just AI, it's quantum. Quantum computing is actually going to be, it's possible for companies to start buying quantum computers as of next year. It's getting so much cheaper. It's autonomous vehicles coming into our roads. It's humanoid companies. There's been a 4x growth in the number of humanoid companies building serious robots from this year compared to last year. It's the fact that memory and processing chips are exponentially getting better. It's the fact that we're living in a world where IoT devices are becoming more integrated into our lives. So better sensors, better controls of things, better analytics. It's a lot of things happening at the same time. It's not just AI. So when you have all of these changes and people without the skills of knowing how to implement them, that's why the skill is going to become very important. It's actually going to be the experience, because you mentioned consultants, for instance, right? You'd go to a McKinsey consultant before because you're going to buy knowledge. You're going to buy frameworks. You're going to buy governance models. Today, knowledge is freely disseminated. It's free. So why do people need consultants now? They need them for execution. They're going to become more body shops than anything else. People are still going to need them for some experience, of course, and some ideas. But it's increasingly going to become a body shop delivery house rather than just a knowledge house that tells people how to do things.
Yeah, I've been saying that as well. I could just be calling it performativity instead. You can't just hand over a deck of strategy, or you can't hand in as a school student an assignment. You have to perform it. You can't send in your CV. You have to perform your CV. It's all about performativity and real life experiences. Going back to what you said, the young kids want, right? That's what we're going to need in the future, right? And I think that's interesting as well. But it also means that one of the I want to ask you, maybe you're getting to that already. I wanted to ask you, how AI transformation is different to digital transformation. But maybe really we're just in this really big digital transformation with all of these different technologies coming together at the perfect storm.
Correct. And just to finish the previous topic, because it's important. One thing that I'm seeing as well is less and less people going to further education like university because they don't want to go into debt, especially in countries like US, UK, etc. And what's happening is less and less companies are actually valuing the university education people have. Less companies, less HR people are looking at where you went to school. Less and less companies are going to hire junior people. It's going to force them to go into solopreneurship. But don't forget, we're also building towards a world, it's called the gig economy, where less and less companies are going to hire full-time employees. Companies, as they start automating more and more work, they're going to want only pieces of work to be delivered by humans. And it does not make sense for a person to be a full-time employee if they only do half a job. So they're going to become contractors. So we're going to have a world very soon, and this is increasing, it's already happening, where companies are tendering out pieces of work for contractors to complete. So we're building towards a world as well where full-time employment is actually not normal. It's going to become less normal over time. So don't forget, there's a gig economy also building in the background.
Yeah, just wondering if there won't be anything that we'll sort of, some complexity from this that will sort of hoard into another enterprise. There'll be a diffusion right now of roles in the gig economy, and then it will sort of consolidate again in the future. Because I think we've seen waves like this before when things happen, right? There's also been, a lot of these people starting their technology firms in their garage was because there was no real job for them that made sense for what they wanted to do, right? So you see, so maybe what I'm looking for is the dialectics in this, right? How we are sort of, diffusing things and then consolidating it again. And because I think a lot of people have said on the only constant, I always ask in the end, I'm going to ask you as well, Danilo, what is the only constant? And people have said, whenever we do things to reduce complexity, we always increase complexity. Complexity increases all the time. So that's what I'm also thinking about here, right? Are we going to do, are we just going to take the fractal of what we're doing now and then just zoom out and make it even more, a new fractal. And then that's what we keep working on, a new complexity we invented. AI maintenance will become a thing. We're all just going to be sitting around evaluating AI output and having the worst jobs humanity has ever had, but as many burgers and cars as we'd ever want, to get. So you're just sitting around being a middle manager, saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And having actually, everything you want.
No. So that will not last very long. And the reason for that is, so for instance, I work a lot with regulators and governments. And one thing that they're doing at the moment to protect jobs is to say that there must be a human in the loop.
Yeah.
So it could be that an AI system, an automation system is creating a piece of work or a decision. But at the end of the day, a human has to sign it off. So that's called human in the loop.
Yes.
But it's going to come to a point very quickly. We're already at this when, for instance, you're going to see GPT-5 coming out very soon. We're at the point already where the IQ of AI models, especially the ones which are underground, not the ones you can buy online like everybody else, the IQ is far greater than a human. And by the end of the year, it's going to be 300 IQ plus. When it comes to next year, 300, 400, 500 IQ plus, is it going to make any sense to have human in the loop? It's going to be a little bit like me giving my work to my 9-year-old to check. He's going to look at it and be like, what the hell is this? I can't check it.
Danilo, I have to ask you now, because you're bringing this. Did you read about this, the Claude shopkeeper?
Claude shopkeeper? No, I haven't. Actually.
No, you should read that story. Claude, Anthropic had Claude, they call it Claudius, an AI agent they set up, manage a snack shop in the office.
Yeah.
And the things it did, I think it's the most hilarious article I've ever read. It was like fully autonomous, had a budget, had money, all that, and it could order, restock, and it was really good at finding vendors and all that, but it was also exceptionally bad at understanding what a good business is. It actually changed. During this process, someone came and asked it if it could sell him a cube of tungsten, right? The metal. And it was like, no, I can't, but maybe I should. Maybe this is a niche market. I need to sell as well to this Anthropic guy. So it bought a lot of tungsten cubes and starting having more of a metallurgy shop, right? And it gave discounts, but only to Anthropic employees, but they were 99% of its customer base. It's like, why are you giving discounts to all your customers? And
look, one thing that's very important is we cannot take isolated experiments like this and extrapolate it to this is what AI is.
No, but it's still Anthropic doing it, right? So it's not just some bashers, Anthropic posting about this, right?
You have to understand that every experiment has its flaws. You have to read the paper, the white paper. You have to read the setup. You have to read the configurations.
Yeah.
And in there, you will find the answers. That's why you very rarely should look at one experiment. You have to look at many experiments. I've had experiments, for instance, where I've ran AI programs, some of the biggest in the world, and I've managed to create 50% cost cuts.
Yeah, but I completely agree. And what they also say is that it was really good at finding vendors, negotiating, doing a lot of complex task. It was actually very capable of doing, but having the overall, perspective of running the business and what I usually call the demand side of things, understanding the purpose. Was like I don't really exist in the world. Except it actually also started writing to people that I'm waiting here in a blue tie. It wrote some things, but it isn't. It's a language model, right? But it's a really funny article. You should really check it out.
But it's really, really important that people don't take that experiment as this is what exemplifies AI. It's really important because a lot of times I find the noisiest stories gets the most attention. This is normal. It's always been the case. But then people form opinions on that without going deep into it, and this is the lazy approach people have. So please do not take that as an example. I've seen AI do things, in certain situations way better than any group of humans, the best humans in the world. So it depends on the application. It depends on the way they've built it, the way they set it up. It's very important to
the purpose, right? As you said, right, and how we set it up. I completely agree, and I understand what you're saying. Because there's this weird dance, right, working AI, where you suddenly either you fall into the doomer or you fall into the boomer side. It's very delicate, right? So if I talk about this study, I'll be. No, you're saying that it can't do anything, but that's not my point. My point is saying it can do a lot of things, but it still needs that direction saying, what is it you want me to do? What is the demand? How should I make 100 tungsten cubes for you? Oh, great.
This brings us to the topic actually of AGI and ASI. I think we should cover it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think there's no official definition, but I was spending a couple of days with Jensen Huang in Paris. And we talked about this. We talked about AGI and ASI. And we had this conversation with a few other heads of AI from Mistral and a bunch of other companies. And what are you talking about here is a form of AGI. It will be more intelligent when AGI really exists. But AGI is like the textbook smart. It follows all of the human things that we've already taught it really, really well. It's able to apply concepts, connect the dots. It's really good at just applying the most beautiful human knowledge that we've created. It's textbook smart. It will pass every exam better than every human. It will reach a point where it can run engineering projects. It's just fantastic. It's just like a really smart group of people. ASI is a little different. And this is the issue. I think a lot of people confuse AGI with ASI, but it's good that we have two terms now. ASI is a little bit more theological. It's a little bit more coming up with new concepts that we have never come up with before. It's a different form of intelligence. It's taking concepts and evolving the human concepts into new ones. So it's a different type of intelligence. It's a lot deeper. It's a lot more evolutionary. Whereas AGI is just really good at what we have today and just making sure it connects all the dots. ASI, new intelligence, new concepts we have never had before.
On its own, right?
On its own. So AGI is for sure going to be around within the next 2 years. So by 2027, AGI is existing. It can do anything which is logical based, normal jobs better than any human. This is without a doubt. There's no barriers to energy. There's no barriers to processing speed, memory. There's no barriers there. We will reach that. There's no problem. ASI, whole different ballgame. And that's the one that I think it might never be reachable, or it will be reached within, 10, 20 years plus. And I think it's important people have those two distinctions, because I think a lot of times when we talk about superintelligence, we are actually referring to ASI. We're not referring to AGI.
Yeah, we're referring to the things we've seen in sci-fi, right? We're referring to C-3POs and things that have afraid of things and have opinions, right? And I think it's very much close to what I discussed this with Carl Friston as well on the podcast, right? Who is actually, he's some guy to discuss intelligence and with, but he also said that, when AI wants to have an opinion about you because it's curious about you, genuinely, not because it's been prompted to, but it has a genuine, real curiosity about who is Danilo, or when he wants to go to the beach to take a swim because he wants to feel the water, then you have something that's an agent or an intelligence that's on its own, right? That's what he calls it, like that. That's the ASI thing. I think actually he defines it sort of in that episode as well, and that's where demand side becomes a thing that can also be automated. I still think, personally, I don't think we'll ever get to a place where demand is fixed, because we want human demand. We'll only value the human demand as a real demand. Everything else we tend to historically think is not a valid demand, where we don't really care about our animals, and we don't really care, right?
Well, I'll give you a different scenario. I'm working with an organization that is developing LLM models to understand animal language.
Yeah. And that's interesting. I love that. I read also about this. There's some people like, I also heard about what are plants feeling. I'm like, what's going on here, right, guys? But there are some things going on here.
So, for instance, you've mentioned something very important. The fact we don't care about other. This is a blanket statement. A lot of people care about animals, but let's say we'll never. Well, most people who are sane would never put an animal's life ahead of its own. Right, or another human that they love. Let's say.
I know there are people who will, and they know the setups, but I know that. But I'm just saying that, on general, it's not like if you look at human civilization as a whole.
Yeah,
it doesn't look like we really care, right? Let's just put it there. I think we can say that.
But that's why I said a sane person. An insane person would do something else. But when we start talking to an animal, when we actually start understanding its feelings, why did this come up? For instance, I'll give you some background. I was doing some work for. NOAC, I think it's called. It's the Atmospheric Association of the US. They manage all of the weather stations in the US, satellite and all oceanic activity. It's a pretty big government department. And they pose a challenge to me. How can they better accurately determine weather? Because there's a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes in the US. And I said to them, well, one thing I've noticed is animals start migrating way before weather storms happen. What if we could understand animals? And then we could use that in order to determine what's going to happen with the weather and preempt it a little bit more. And they were like, wow, that's a great idea. Let's start developing this. So I think when we get to the point where we can start understanding, what actually insects, animals are saying and thinking, you see, this is going to bring us a deeper purpose, because they're going to be telling us things that we don't know about Mother Nature.
But I also think that it means that we need to recognize other intelligences, right? I think I mentioned this in another episode as well, that we sent a record to outer space to communicate with aliens, right? On Voyager 1, I think. But we never even spoke to a cow or a dog, right? So how on earth would we expect to speak to an alien who would be a completely different thing, right? And why would they want to listen to the Beatles on a weird record, right? Vinyl. It's super weird, right? Yeah. It's actually the weirdest thing I think we've ever done, sent that record out. But anyway, but I always laugh about that. But so I think that when we start recognizing other intelligences as well, which is also, I think, going to be a paradigm shift for us. If we killed off the Neanderthals and all that because they were a little bit different, a lot of things are looking like that's what we actually maybe probably did. Then suddenly now it's talking to cows, and then we can start recognizing maybe also, and I think that's what AI has also brought to the table. People saying like, this is definitely intelligent. I'm also saying this is intelligent. Is it complete intelligence, like I would expect my kid to be after I brought them up for 17 years with love and all that? No, it's not the same thing, but it's an intelligent thing. It's a form of something. It does things, and we need to recognize that and find out how can we use that. And I think that's maybe the biggest problem right now that people have to actually figure out how do we deal with that.
Imagine how our horizons.
Does it want to kill me? Does it want to kill me, Ryan? Does it want to kill me?
No. This is nonsense. I'll explain why later as well. Imagine how our horizons will expand when we can understand nature properly, when we can start understanding the reasons why diseases happen, when we can start having infinite sources of energy where we can go anywhere. Our horizons and our purpose as humanity will expand completely. So that's why I think that enlightenment, Renaissance 2.0 phase, when it comes, we're not going to be thinking about work and paying taxes anymore. The total system of how we work is going to change because we have a greater purpose. How many times, for instance, have you woken up and you're like, even though if you love what you do, for instance, I love what I do. I've been doing what I love my whole life, but still, there are some mornings I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm waking up every day, roughly at the same time. I have to sleep a certain time, and I go work. I go make money. I pay taxes, and then, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like this is the purpose of life. So I think once we edge closer to understanding the purpose of life and what we should be doing, our ideas of what we should be focusing on will completely change.
I personally believe that this will always be out of reach, right? I feel like every time I'm close to the chariot of fire that will take me from Mount Sinai to God, along with Elijah, the chariot has found a new place to park and some other mountain, and I need to run over there, right? but that's
life is a journey. Life is a journey, right?
It's always overcoming these challenges, right? And in overcoming multiple challenges, then happiness sort of arrives some place around that. I want to get back to the human in the loop just a little bit, right? And then back to and then onto a practical question, because I think I spoke to Robert Fuchs who is developing steering mechanisms for JTech, which also does it for Toyota. He's the head of R&D for them, and he spoke about what they call the human crumple zone. Have you heard about the human crumple zone before?
No, explain it.
It's where you have a car. It has a crumple zone in the front that protects the human driver. So if you crash, it will sort of fold before it crashes the human. Kills the human. And the same way he's saying that humans in complex systems have been put in as these scapegoats, basically, these people in front of extremely complex systems they have no control over, like autopilots in airplanes or 3 Mile Island nuclear facilities or something like that. That's the two primary examples he gives, where, something goes wrong, the human will be blamed because he was in the loop, right? He was in the loop, but he had no chance to be in the loop, right? So there's going to be a period here where we're going to see that, isn't there? That's what I talked about. This human sitting there saying yes and no, and our attention doesn't work well with that. What are your best, recommendations for companies to actually overcome this and make sure you have meaningful jobs in this AI transition period, which we will have for 10 years at least, or something like that?
Yeah, so that I agree. So we will have very interesting jobs. It will change a lot. But I do believe, again, that will come a point where it doesn't make sense anymore because we're no longer the most intelligent in the room. So then...
But will people not still have someone saying that you're accountable for all the robots? Here's a robot army.
No, I think eventually... So at the moment, if you have an autonomous vehicle and you have an accident, it is the human's fault, because they're the ones who have activated the autonomous system and they're supposed to be there paying attention, etc. But once it becomes widespread, and we do this in our businesses, we do this in all kinds of services, the only way that this will make logical sense is if the actual companies will start taking liability blame for anything going wrong. Because then, fully autonomous systems, for instance, let's say Amazon, they've had this concept for a long time. It is working in some cities where they're deploying things through drones. Ultimately, it has to be Amazon's fault if something goes wrong.
Yeah,
and the same thing will happen to Tesla and other systems as well.
But then we need to have to get to the point where we put AI to do that. We need to have some sort of reckoning with that mindset, don't we? The accountability mindset that a human also always has to have the responsibility. And isn't that a complete revamp? And how should boards and companies actually go about this? How should they approach this? Do you have any idea on what to do about this?
You've just got me fired up now. So boards of companies, 79% of them, they don't believe that they are equipped to even understand or govern AI in their own companies. So almost 80%. So boards have completely lost cause. Every board should add someone that has AI experience onto their board, because otherwise they will have massive challenges. I think it's going to be some cases we will be able to still have human in the loop, and ultimately a human will be the ultimate decider and the ultimate person to blame if something goes wrong. But in some cases, it will be the tech company that has to take liability. I think it's not going to be a blanket situation for all scenarios. Some scenarios will be humans still responsible. Some will be tech companies. How they should prepare. To be honest, the biggest challenge I face when I'm advising companies on AI, which I do all over the world now, is I have to spend a lot of time just educating them what it is. And then I have to educate them, of course, on the frameworks, the governance models of how they should then look at this and think about it and look after it in their companies. And then, and only then, after going through this massive alignment in knowledge and in approach, then they're able to start talking about, okay, where do we apply it? How do we expand it? How do we scale it? But it's a long journey. It takes years to get there. But the thing that everybody has to start with is just a little bit of education, not just listening to the news, but actually understanding how this stuff works. And that should start by adding somebody to their board that has significant AI experience.
And then taking some bets, I guess, also, saying that maybe this AI can actually surveil itself instead of creating. I don't know if you're going there, you're going full on to that level. You're talking about with GPT-5 and all that. They can, I just think for a lot of companies, this will be a really big step to say now AI is surveilling itself, right? That's like we can do it in small things, and I recommend. I always do it in process flows as well, right? So the AI is checking the AI results, right? So that's the simplest way of doing an evaluation with a semantic model, basically, that you don't know what's going on inside of it, right? But in the end, having that, I think a lot of companies will end up creating a lot of these, old school crappy RPA jobs where it failed and now it's your fault, or you have to fix what it failed on, or that there'll be a lot of crappy job creation also here, right? Because a lot of people are saying that you just need a human to review it, right? And I think that's a crappy job. I think that really is that's a sweatshoppy crappy job to just be the guy sitting there reviewing what the AI did, and the AI did all the fun stuff.
So let's go a little bit deeper, because I think it's more nuanced than that. So what's going to happen is every company is going to go through 2 stages of major transformation. So what every company is doing today is they're just applying AI and automation wherever they see fit. And that's a big mistake, because they're not reimagining work. They're not re-engineering their company. So they're going to go through that, and they're going to be very busy doing that, and they're going to hit a glass ceiling very, very quickly, like every company does. And I see this literally every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's going to happen is they're going to go, oh, we actually have to reimagine how our company works. We have to actually re-engineer our processes so that we know when a human hands work off to a digital worker, etc., and vice versa. And we have to coordinate all of that so they work seamlessly.
Mm.
And then they're going to quickly land on the concept of having a workflow engine to coordinate and orchestrate human and digital workers. And then they have to recreate their entire company inside of this workflow engine.
Instead of having these silos, because silos are built around responsibilities, right?
Yes, exactly. So, and then they're going to go through many years of building out this workflow engine that does everything the company does. So people work inside a system, and digital workers work inside a system. So, unfortunately, most companies don't understand this concept, and they're going to go straight to workflow engines. Unfortunately, they're very short-term thinking. They have limited budgets because they don't think about the ultimate end game.
They're also sitting in the roles, right? They're also sitting in the roles, having their portfolio dominant. And now they're like, oh, should I use my role now to destroy my role? No, I shouldn't, right? But
so what I'm trying to get to is that work is actually going to be very interesting because we're going to do these silly things of applying AI and automation here, there, and everywhere. And fine, that's going to be kind of interesting. But it's going to be super interesting, actually, to completely reimagine companies, to completely redesign them, to completely redesign the processes. I think that's one of the most interesting jobs you can do. Because you get into the nuts and bolts of actually engineering a company again, redesigning it. And then what work should be done by a human, what work should be done by an AI, deciding that. And eventually that changes over time as capabilities change. So I actually think we're going to have very interesting work for the people that can still have work and won't be replaced by silly companies that don't think about the actual future. They will have tremendous work working in transformation. And that's the most valuable people on earth are going to be the people that can execute transformations effectively.
But we've also been saying this, and I think you must have said this before as well to companies that, also 10 years ago, that they should reimagine their whole organization and get rid of the silos. And, and I remember Gartner in 2014, your boss in the future will be a bot, maybe. Or you remember, and they meant RPA bot, which was like, what is going on? Yeah. But we've been saying this for years. Why is it different now? And you already said why it's different now, but why will they listen this time?
So there's a couple of differences. So yes, we did have the RPA/automation era, 2016, 2020, let's say. A lot of companies got better because of automation and RPA, but they didn't fully transform. And the reason is, there's 2 reasons. There's 2 major reasons. There's many, but there's 2 major ones. One is RPA is hard-coded intelligence. It's not real intelligence.
Really,
so I remember actually with my teams, because I ran the world's largest automation program, 3,500 bots. I remember with my team, we go build automations, and we at the beginning of this era, we even had to tell the RPA what pixel on the screen to click on for certain buttons. What if the button moves somewhere else? It would just fail. So it wasn't real intelligence. It was just hard-coded intelligence. I
Extremely
like to call it.
brittle. I don't know. On top of all the other structured data we already had, right?
Exactly, and the world that we live in is very dynamic. Applications get updated frequently. New applications get launched. Businesses launch new products and services. So brittle, hard-coded intelligence will never transform a company. So that's a problem. That was a technical barrier. The other barrier to change was that companies were being very lazy. They're just applying automation here and there and everywhere. They actually were not looking at re-engineering themselves. So, and if they did, to be honest, they wouldn't have achieved the full outcome of reaching ultimate efficiency because of the hard-coded RPA bots. But I would argue, as of 2 years ago now, we have everything we need to fully transform a company. We have real intelligence, workflow engines, integrations, really good apps. We have everything we need. We just need people that can actually reimagine how a company should work. So, waiting. So some CEOs, they tell me, let's wait another 2 years when things get better, then we can transform our company.
I call that tech deflation. Yeah,
exactly. That's a big mistake, because we already have everything we need to transform a company. All we need is the mindset and understanding that we actually need to rip out the engine and rebuild it. Right?
So Danilo, what would be your top three? Because I want, we talked about going practical. I don't think we have the time to go fully practical here. But what would be the 3 practical advice to boards and C-levels executives right now from you? What should they focus on doing right now, tomorrow?
So it's relatively easy. So the first thing is adding somebody to their board that understands AI and automation or transformations. Someone has actually done it, not someone who comes from a big 4. Someone who's actually gotten their hands dirty, has battle scars. That's number 1, because the transformation and changing culture starts at the very top. Number 2 is start to focus on process. Without process, you cannot transform a company. Do not take the lazy route to transformation. Do not be a lazy leader. Lazy leaders should all be shot. They are useless and they're not helping the company. So process is king. That's number 2. And understand your process. Map out your processes. Understand, time motion studies, critical path analysis. Understand process and process mapping, and use it as the blueprint to transform your company. Number 3, you cannot transform a company without the use of workflow engines. It is impossible. Because what you're going to do is you're going to have a bunch of AIs and automations everywhere without any coordination between humans. And even the most intelligent AI system on Earth cannot go in and do somebody's job. It needs structure. It needs to understand what the person is doing and what it should be doing. It needs to understand what it does. A procedure document does not tell a bot what to do. It gives it a direction, but it doesn't actually tell it. So workflow engines are the only way for a company to truly, truly transform. There's many more, but those 3 are a great start, and then we'll get to the more nuanced ones later on. But if you don't have those 3, you can actually not transform a company. Let's say you even had the world's best workflow engine. And let's say that you had the best ideas around process reengineering and knowing where to get to. Where's the North Star that you're going towards? If you don't have the right culture, which is number 1, you can never truly transform. So those 3 are all vital ingredients. If you're missing one, you're never going to be able to transform your company. But if you have all 3, you will transform your company.
What I like about what you're saying here, Danilo, is that we've also gone further out and everything will change and all that. Well, what I really like about what you're saying here is that you're actually taking the existing company seriously. And I think that is a really, really big mistake in the market right now. A lot of people are not taking it seriously. They're going like, we should just revamp it all this, become a startup. But all the startups wants to be is become an entrenched enterprise, right? In the end, that's the dream of all startups. So, but you're taking the enterprise seriously by saying you have processes, you have value change, you have things that are you actually doing well, you have customers, right? And you need to maybe make sure you understand that and then add value to that and orchestrate it and put AI into all of that, right? Basically.
Yeah, and look, not every problem needs to be solved with AI. Some problems are just solved by re-engineering how it's done in terms of just should it be done in the first place. I bet you there isn't a single senior to middle manager that actually knows exactly what people do every day.
No.
So, how the hell can you transform a company if you actually don't know what people are doing? at a click level, how many times they do it, how many times they make the errors, right?
I can hear you've done automation.
Basics.
You've definitely done automation, Danilo. I can hear that. But because I remember those. But also, how far down your list will be, stop hiring people and start hiring AIs instead?
I think if you transform a company, you make it as efficient as possible, you will be able to go into new markets, launch new products, new services. So I actually am quite against firing people, unless they're bad workers, right? Everyone has workers which don't care about the company. Those should be fired immediately.
Always.
But if you're transformed as a company, you're doing what you're doing today the most efficient way possible. You have then the capability and the capacity to go into new markets, to open new products and services, and you should repurpose those people to those areas. So I think you should keep people. If they're good people, they have the right attitude, you should 100% repurpose them into the new things you can go into. I'll give you an example, for instance. Tech companies are starting to go into finance. Companies like PayPal, companies like Google, a lot of banks are becoming technology companies. So this thing of having verticals for companies, they're going to start to melt. They're going to start to mold. A lot of companies which are consultancy companies are going to go into legal spaces now, because we can launch up a legal practice very quickly with AI. So there's going to be a lot of convergence of industries, and you can only go and compete in new industries if you actually optimize what you're doing already. Otherwise, you're just going to create more headache, more chaos for the company, and it's going to be less profitable as well.
I love those. I really love those answers. I think you're grounding it very, very neatly, and that's why maybe we should just do one more of those three things, Danilo things here. So what should employees do right now?
So on the employee side, don't go and pay 15 grand for a course. Just go to YouTube and watch lots of free tutorials. Understand LLM models. Download all of them on your phone, all of them on your computer. Once you started to use LLM models, and even the open source ones you can get from Hugging Face or from MetaLlama, just understanding what they do, their capabilities. Stage 2 is then actually learning how to integrate them together using 8AN or Zapier or some other integration tools, or even MCP, which is a new form of integration as well. Start building some more complicated automations.
Understand what a complicated automation means, maybe also just sometimes.
Understand what it means, understand how to build it. So for instance, silly thing, somebody sends me an email, and I've got to take an invoice out of it and prepare a payment. Understand how to automate all of that. Actually get your hands dirty and do it. So do that personally on your computer, because a lot of companies, they don't give you the tools to go and play at work. But at least if you're evolving as an individual, you're ready for when the company does do that. So it's education by doing, ultimately. The second thing I would say is 100% change your mindset about AI. AI is the biggest opportunity in your life. You can build a business. You can get better as an employee. You can get promoted. You can do wonderful things with it. Stop fearing AI, because it actually doesn't do any good for you. The only reason people are fearing AI is because of lack of knowledge. It's a bit like those cavemen, that see, ships coming to their shore for the first time. They're scared shitless, right? They don't know what to do. With knowledge comes, brings your anxiety levels down, and it actually turns that anxiety to something useful, something practical that you can actually go and do yourself. And the third thing I would say is be very careful with your sphere of influence. Only focus on the things that you have direct control over. So a lot of people, they're worried about what the government's going to do, and is AI companies going to take over the world? Who cares? You are not in control of that. Delete it from your mind. The only thing you should be caring about is the things that you can actually control. What do you eat? Where do you go? What you learn? The things that you have direct control over. And embed AI into that sphere of influence. Everything outside of that, just delete it. So you have to almost, have a little bit more tunnel vision, hyper focus on re-educating yourself, getting your hands dirty, focus on your sphere of influence. Those are the three things I would say for people personally.
Yeah, so a lot of focus here. I think that's great advice, right? But also, expand yourself into the AI era and then focus on what you're doing, right? And apply it there, right? I think great advice, Danilo. I've loved having you on the show. I think this has been a brilliant conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We also dug deep on some of them. I think actually we've gone very deep on some topics. So I've been really happy with that. So thank you for going there with me, Danilo.
Thanks.
I have a final question for you, as I've also spoke about earlier that we have this final question. So, are you ready for it?
Of course, let's go for it.
So Danilo, what is the only constant?
I think my answer is going to surprise a lot of people. I'm not going to say it's anything to do with technology. The only constant, and I truly believe this, and this is what we're going to end up as a state in terms of humanity, is love. I think there's no point in doing anything on Earth, on doing anything as an employee, anything as a company, if you don't have love. Love is not just going and hugging a person and saying, I love you. It's caring, it's having compassion, it's looking at a deeper and more meaningful purpose. It's genuine care and purposeful care for what you're doing. And you can have the world's biggest transformation, you can have the world's best AI, you can have the world's most efficient company, but what is the point of it if at the end of the day you don't have the most meaningful connection of them all, which is love? There's no point bringing up a child to be, the most efficient, the most intelligent child that goes to the best schools in the world if that child does not give other people love. If that child did not have love, there will be a broken child. So at the end of the day, and this is said in many different kinds of books, religious books as well, scriptures, end of the day, the thing that matters the most is love. And that's what we all should aim for. Love through understanding, love through everything that we do. And by acting in that way, it works a little bit like gratitude. I think gratitude falls under love as well. You just appreciate the journey a little bit more. You understand there's a higher purpose. And it just gives you a meaning. The ultimate meaning for me, and I think for everybody, should be love.
Gratitude, compassion, care, and the reason to get out of bed in the morning, right, Danilo? That's love.
Yeah. The thing I kept saying before about lazy leaders, people that just wake up every day and want to tick a box that they're managing people and delivering some objective the company has given them, versus what you actually should be doing, which is getting out of bed every morning and genuinely getting to know your team. What do they do on the weekends? What actually drives them? What is it that they actually want to do with their careers? How can you help them get there? Becoming a force of change in their life. I think that's a more purposeful way of managing people and building teams than just, ticking a bunch of boxes and getting a big bonus at the end. There's no meaning in that.
You made me think of the whole, helping people and guiding them on. It made me think that I always said that my life is about making this gravity pit that's mine, where I affect things and everything's good. Everyone wants to come to me as well, be around me. And I think that sort of rhymes a little bit with your concept of love here as well, right? Yeah. Be something in the world that means something, right?
Yeah. I'm just to be honest, to finish that topic, I'm really sick of people that just go into work just to pay a mortgage. They just go into business in order to buy a private jet. They very quickly become empty people, and they very quickly realize that they're not reaching their potential, and they become very frustrated people, even depressed or suicidal at one point. It's very important to take every day as a gift, every day as a miracle, every situation, even the situation we're here today, having this wonderful conversation. This is a gift. This is a gift. We could potentially change one person's life, or maybe 1,000 people's lives, but it's a gift. It's a gift to get to know you. It's a gift to be here, to have the voice to talk. A couple of days ago, I actually lost my voice, so I got to appreciate my voice a lot more. So everything is a gift, and that's how we have to behave. I know it's easier said than done, because we have hard days, we have days of disappointment. And look, those days are by design. They're supposed to be there so you can appreciate the good things in life. So when bad things come, when you perceive them as bad, just perceive it as part of the journey, because it's needed in order to give you perspective. So you can be grateful for those gifts that you get in life. So look, end of the day, it's all love. All of these things I'm talking about is just love. It's love for life, love for the gifts you get in life.
And I've absolutely, Danilo, I agree with everything you're saying, and I've loved this conversation, and I want to express my gratitude and say thank you so much for spending the time with me on this conversation today. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I hope people enjoy it as well.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.